face, I'm assuming you just mean like common things that I see students struggle with in AN04, things to try and incorporate in your shots, not so much coming up with ideas. So if you're going into AN04, there's two shots that you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing the pantomime shot, and you're going to be doing a voice acting shot, a dialogue shot. Now, for the pantomime shot, and this goes for everyone here who's going to be going into AN04 or doing a pantomime shot, keep in mind that the pantomime shot is not a facial acting shot. It is not a facial performance shot. You're going to get a rig that has facial controls, and it will be oh so tempting to go in there and do a whole bunch of crazy expressions on the face. That is not the point of the shot. The point of the shot is to tell a story and show emotion through pantomime, through body language. That's what pantomime is. Pantomime is not facial acting, it is body language. You're going to have the face, but the face is secondary. So when you are animating your shot and when you're planning out your shot, try to think of how to show the acting through the body performance. That's going to be the biggest thing. Do not get caught up on the face, because you're just not going to have time for it. And for anyone here who has been in the class 4 pantomime shot, you know there's not enough time to get everything done if you're doing a whole bunch of facial stuff. It's a lot of stuff to do in, I think it's 4 or 5 weeks. So focus on the body. Focus on the body story. So it's 100% body and 20-40% face. Kinda, yeah. The face is secondary. You will definitely want to put expressions into the face so that you're not just leaving a blank character, but it is more important to get the body working and the body mechanics working. The biggest pitfall that I see students run into when they go into AN04 is you just finished 2 classes of body mechanics, you finished your fundamentals classes, everything was great, yeah, you got a solid understanding of body mechanics. As soon as class 4 starts, everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, most students kind of, I would say almost, it's kind of like a panic where it's like, oh no, I've got a face to animate. And I remember I did the same thing. There's a face to animate. Oh my God, what do I do? And all the body mechanics that you learned for the last 3 terms go out the window, and now you're just focusing on the face and the body just kind of gets left behind. That's the opposite of what you want. Think of the pantomime shot as the ultimate body mechanic shot. You are taking everything that you incorporated from the first 3 classes, and now you're putting into body mechanics and putting acting into the body. Is the character happy? Are they sad? Show that in the body. Show the story in the body. Make your poses beautiful. If any of you have been in the bad guys analyses that I've done, one of the big things that throughout all of the analysis, no matter what we were looking at, the thing that really stands out is that every single pose is beautiful. Every single pose is appealing, and there's a beautiful silhouette and a beautiful just line of action. Everything is dynamic. So you want to get that. Something that I actually tend to recommend for students when they first start their pantomime is just put a polygon cube on the face and parent it to the head so that you don't even see the face. Don't even look at the face, don't look at the expression. Just put a cube on their head for that first pass so you really just get all the body mechanics in there. So that is the biggest one on the pantomime shot. And then Noelia mentioned let's see, hands, fingers. Yes, you want to do lots of good hand poses. That's going to be huge in just making the characters feel alive. Don't end up a shot with just paddle hands. I would say spend more time on the hands than you do on the face. That would be a good area to focus more effort on. So let's see. And then 7 on the keyboard with no lights will give you a silhouette. Yeah, that's a great little trick. If you're in Maya, just hit 7, and you'll see a nice silhouette of your characters as long as you don't have any background elements, which you could always add to a layer and turn off very quickly. That's a great way to just see your silhouette and to improve it. Hands was my panic attack. We actually had fingers and I didn't know how to animate them. Yeah, I still feel I can't animate fingers. Fingers are hard because for the most part, they don't really move. And yet they have to move because they look too stiff if you don't. But I could just do all of this and you'll notice that my hands are moving a lot, but my fingers are not wiggling. The thing that makes hands really come to life is the subtle motion of basically the tendons and the reaction of the tendons to the fingers. So when you do this, your fingers will straighten. As you do this, your fingers will bend slightly. So you can see more of a bend here, less of a bend there. It's very slight, but when you add that in, that creates that slight organic feeling. You don't want to do one-to-one or else it starts to feel kind of weird, but just slightly helps a lot. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things. And just kind of just nice, appealing shapes, flow. We've done a lot of talks on this, but if anyone wants, I can do another talk. You're just looking at the arcs of the fingertips, arcs of the knuckles, and every other knuckle. Try not to get flat lines. So if you see my hand here, if you look at the knuckles, it creates this arc. Our hands naturally have arcs in them. If you look at the knuckles here, there's a slight arc. If I do this, there's kind of an arc in the tips of the fingers. If you line them up in a way that everything is kind of straight, that feels boring and dead. And if you can get poses like that, it's just not going to be that interesting. Try to get some sort of arc in there. It could go the opposite way, trying to look at my camera and do it at the same time. So now it's arcing this way. Something like that is going to add a lot of appeal. And then making sure your spacing is dynamic and interesting and not just all even. So yeah, watch those arcs. That's going to really help push your hands. And if you're having trouble posing hands or trying to come up with something interesting, just look up a hand reference online. That's always a nice thing to do. Now, to go on to the second shot, your dialogue shot. The dialogue shot is all about animating dialogue and learning how to do dialogue. So in the dialogue shot, this is going to be dependent on your mentor, but a lot of times mentors recommend just having a very subtle shot for the dialogue. Have a character sit down, have them leaning on something, have them just standing there. You don't have to have them doing a whole bunch of action and doing a whole bunch of complex motions. Doesn't mean you want them to just sit still and do nothing, but don't overcomplicate it. Don't have your character doing flips in a whole dance sequence if you're really wanting to learn how to do lip sync. So usually what I recommend is just kind of give your character something to do. So for example, they could be standing there, but instead of just standing, maybe they're cooking something. So there's going to be some subtle, like working with a knife and cutting some carrots, or prepping a pan, turning on the stove, the element, something like that, or maybe just checking in the oven. It's small motions that are very nice and give you a lot of range, but doesn't have to be this super complex flipping and just really complex body mechanics, because you're going to be animating the face and that's going to be a little bit more of the focus. Doesn't mean that you disregard the body mechanics. Body mechanics are always first. Even on a dialogue shot, if you don't have body mechanics, who cares what the face is doing? It's not going to read. But if you have solid body mechanics, if the face isn't quite right, yeah, you can quickly redo it, or you can redo a mouth shape. It's not so bad. If you have bad body mechanics, everything you do on the face might have to be redone, because once you fix the body, it's going to change everything on the head, might ruin everything that you've done. So always focus on body mechanics first, get a solid pass in there. And then for dialogue, the biggest thing is just finding a very interesting dialogue shot. Interesting means that your character has inflections and they are speaking with auditory interest, I guess you could say. They're not talking in a boring, monotone voice where there's no change and their cadence is very even and there's no pauses in the dialogue. It just gets very boring when you start talking like this. It's not interesting to listen to. You want pauses. You want moments where the character will exclaim and change their voice a little bit more. Maybe talk a little lower, maybe talk a little slower, and then faster in some sections. Those little elements make dialogue much more interesting to listen to than a monotone or just a flat delivery. The other thing that I try to recommend, which is hard to do, but is something to aim for, try to have a piece of dialogue that kind of tells a self-contained story. It doesn't feel like it's cut off halfway and we're missing something. And then the more important thing is find a short piece of dialogue. This goes for class 4 and class 5. If you're looking for a piece of dialogue, you're going to have a time range for your shots. Let's say from 5 to 10 seconds. I forget the exact frame range, but we'll just use that as an example. Let's say you've got 5 to 10 seconds to look for your dialogue. Aim for 5. If anything, aim for less than 5 in the actual dialogue, because you can always add pauses at the beginning or at the end. You want the shortest thing that you absolutely can get. Do not go for the long range. It is going to save you so much time. And if you just think about it, if you've got 5 seconds of animation versus 10 seconds, that's half the time, which means you get double the amount of time to polish your shot. That is very, very important. Your time is important on this. You're 12 weeks, especially on class 5, you're going to have 12 weeks to work on a shot. That's not enough a lot of times, especially if you're working and you've got other things in life and you can't dedicate 100% of your time on these shots. Go for 5. It is so much better to have a short shot that has a lot more polish than a long shot that has a lot of really cool ideas, but in the end kind of looks because you never had time to polish it up. Always go for the shorter range. And this goes even for pantomime shots, whatever. Always try to go for the shortest range you can get.